Hello, my name is Jonathan Adams. Throughout this presentation, myself and my team members will cover the software design and requirements specification documentation for our intended product deliverable developed by my group, Night and Day Games, for the class CEN4020. For this project, my group, Night and Day Games, will be developing entertainment software. Specifically, we will be developing a video game called Peg Leg Pirates. The members on this project are myself in the role of project engineering lead and design lead, Matthew Bradley, who has the role of scenario and mechanics software developer, Angela Lolis, responsible for user interface design and development and web development, and Michael Wessel, who manages our software development. In this presentation, we will cover a few topics to fully outline our final product delivered by this project. We will begin by providing an overview of the project and our expected final output. Next, we will discuss the scope of the project, tools we intend to use, and how we plan to develop our final product. Following the scope, we will begin an in-depth discussion of our product design and the intended functionality. After an idea of how the product works, we will discuss some constraints for the product and interfaces that require configuration and integration. Finally, we will have a broad overview of our requirements specification. Before we fully leap into the details of this project, I would like to cover a few common terms that will appear during this presentation. First, a game is an instance of the final software product. A game executes on a user machine, and it is synonymous with an executable. A player is another word for a user. When a user accesses the game and participates in using the game, they then become a player. A server is a term to describe a game instance. Our product shall use multiplayer features, and this will be developed in a client-server pattern. When we refer to a server, we specifically mean an instance of the game running through a scenario hosted by a server to which multiple players can act as client machines. A scenario is an iteration of gameplay. Players are given challenges in the form of objectives and goals during a scenario which they must complete. And finally, a character is a common concept for an object which the player controls during a scenario. Characters are meant to act as a representation of the player for the duration of a game. We will begin by discussing a high-level perspective of our intended final product. We will be developing a game. Specifically, we will be developing a first-person, team-based multiplayer game. In this game, players will connect to a server as clients by selecting a server from a list called a server lobby. When a player joins a server, they join other players on a team to compete against other teams in order to complete objectives and goals under defined limitations such as time or other finite resources. These objectives and goals are called scenarios, and players play through looping iterations of a scenario to earn rewards, loot, and experience. As part of our design, we provide a high-level business pitch. Avast, the sea calls to you in Peg Leg Pirates. Embark with your fellow ne'er-do-wells aboard the great ship the Kraken Killer. Take to arms and sabers with your fellow eye-patched powder monkeys in your quest to stop the freebooters from plundering your hard-earned booty. There's nothing better than the salty spray of the ocean seas and gold-filled treasure chests. So raise your Jolly Roger and set your sails for the nearest ship.
The purpose of this project.
So really, we had several influences and themes for this project. We settled on a first-person shooter because right now they are more popular than ever. Really, they're probably the most popular game genre out there, excepting maybe MMORPGs. And honestly, they're really fun. They have a very low learning curve as well, which is also very nice for getting a good, solid, strong user base to drive your revenue stream. We're not trying to imitate Halo or Call of Duty or Battlefield. We're not trying to be the next one, because frankly, these franchises have been at it for, in most cases, over a decade, and there is just no way we're going to do those kinds of shooters better than they do them. They're the best. They have the market cornered in that regard. What we do want to do is, we got inspiration from shooters like Team Fortress 2 and Overwatch, which are still team-based. They're very fast, twitchy shooters, and they revolve around player classes and objective-based gameplay. So they're not just kill the other team until you win. It's there's objectives you fight over, control points, moving things across the map, things like that. We like that for a couple of reasons. It allows us to use classes, which really help for development and game design and getting a prototype out. It also allows us to add new features after launch much easier, because we can just add new classes, and we can tweak one single class without really having to touch all the other ones. Also, the fact that it's objective-based really lets us kind of work around map design and things like that. We don't have to necessarily ensure that every single aspect of gameplay is flawless. As long as it's good enough most of the time for the objective maps, that's at least good on a temporary basis. Also, we like the fact that those games are very good for microtransactions. Both Team Fortress 2 and Overwatch have systems for microtransactions in place. Overwatch, you can buy little boxes that have a random assortment of cosmetic items, and Team Fortress 2, you can buy hats. So that's also just kind of nice to have another design area and possible revenue stream in there. Now, our theme, we actually went with the nautical theme, pirates specifically. We did this deliberately to offset ourselves from a lot of other shooters. As you'll notice today, most first-person shooting games are either set in the far future, such as Halo or the newest Call of Duty, or they're set in very near history, like Overwatch is set, I think, 40 years in the future. Team Fortress 2 is pretty much in a modern society, in a different universe, things like that. A lot of the Battlefield games have been, in fact, the only one that's really been set in the past recently is Battlefield 1 that just came out. So we wanted to go back even further than that. So we went all the way back to the Pirate Age because it's really kind of an untapped genre. But the fact that it's, you think of islands, sailing, things like that, it really lends itself to small, isolated scenarios of only some small teams fighting over objectives in, small little islands. So that also really lends itself very well to development, which is why we went with that.
Next, we will be talking about the project scope. On this slide, you can see the next step for the project scope is the software and hardware considerations that we chose when choosing the game engine framework for developing our. Next, we had to choose a language to develop in. The last step for the software and hardware considerations was to choose a platform. The next thing we had to consider were the resource constraints.
We will now discuss the software design and intended final functionality of the delivered product. This software shall be developed and compiled as an independent software executable that shall run on a set of personal computer operating systems. When a player uses this software, they are able to access the various types of defined functionality through a graphical user interface. Through a set of user interface selections, the player is able to begin gameplay by selecting the Join Game options. They are displayed a series of servers through a server lobby list, and they are able to join a server which runs scenarios. As well, a player may also host a server. When the player selects the options to host a server, the server registers with the server lobby, and other players may join the game by selecting it from the server lobby. In this mode, the player may not both host a server and join a game. Currently, we intend for our server lobby process to be hosted through the Amazon cloud, but this will require more investigation before a full decision can be determined. Here we have a high-level perspective of the software. In this activity diagram, key processes are defined. The player starts the software and is prompted to log into the game. Once they have passed user authentication, they are displayed a series of menu options from the main menu. These menu options are Join a Game, Host a Game, Manage User Account, Manage Settings, and Quit. Each of these functional processes will be defined in more detail.
Next, we will talk about user interfaces. User interfaces control access to game functionalities. In our game, there are three types of user interfaces: the main menu, the heads-up display or HUD, and other GUIs. The first user interface is the main menu. The main menu is a landing screen that the player sees at the entry and termination of the game. It allows the player to access a variety of the game functions, such as joining a game, hosting a game, accessing user account data, managing software settings, and exiting the game. The main menu also leads to a series of other menus, such as character selection or server lobby. The next user interface is the heads-up display or HUD. It is a GUI overlay that the player can see when in game scenarios. It is very slim and covers only a small portion of the screen. It allows the player to use the special features and control their character. It has an action bar that shows the abilities of the character. It has a health and status bar that shows how close the character is to death. A transparent chat window to communicate with other players on their team. A map that shows the level with widgets to help the player navigate. Both the chat window and the map may be toggled on or off. It also has a menu bar with access to settings and other pop-up GUIs that the player can access, and it allows the player to preemptively exit a game before the end of the scenario. Other user interfaces in our game may be any GUIs not a part of the main menu or the HUD. They may consist of pop-up menus that the player can access from the HUD. They may show warnings or notifications, or allow the player to access special menus for specific features. They may show billboard effects in the game, for example, the player's name above their character, or an icon above their character to show that they are typing or speaking. They may show damage effects or spell effects. They can be features that help the player navigate through levels, or they can provide relevant information for decision making in the game.
The software functions define the specific game processes that a player may access when they begin the executable. By navigating through these main menu options, the player is able to perform different actions in the software. These options are join a game, host a game, manage user account, manage configurations and settings, and finally exit the software.
Okay, so we're going to talk about what happens when you want to join a game. So on the main menu, when you launch the game, there's going to be a join game option. There's going to be a bunch of other options like host game, things like that. You click the join game option, it's going to pull up a list of servers. It's going to go contact our server infrastructure and get all the possible servers. And you find one you want to join and you click join. Now, the servers can actually be password protected by the user who hosts the server, so you would have to enter a valid password if that's the case, or they can just be completely open to anyone. Now, if there's no password, or if there is one but you enter a valid password, it's going to check to see if the server has an available player slot. They can only host so many players at a time. If that's the case, then you'll be added to the server and taken to the scenario lobby. Or you'll be taken immediately into the scenario if one is already running. The servers are going to run game scenarios continually. There's going to be a brief lobby in between. It's going to be there for a certain amount of time, maybe 30 seconds or a minute or two. And that's where you can kind of talk to other players on the other team. It'll show score, statistics, things like that, and you vote on the next scenario to play. When the time runs out, it's going to load up the next scenario, and all the players are going to go in, and the game is going to begin. You'll select your spawn point, play through the scenario until it ends, get taken back to the lobby, or you leave. Now, the servers, they can either be player-hosted, which is the ideal option. You know, players set up their own servers with their own rules, things like that, and kind of they can limit scenarios, stuff like that. So it really is great for user-defined content. Or they can be hosted by the developers, in this case us, which we are definitely going to have to host at least a few servers in the beginning until we get a healthy enough user base that, you know, there's enough servers for everyone to play on.
In the Host a Game main menu option, the player is able to host a server which other players can join. When the player selects this main menu option, the player is prompted with a few minor configuration choices. Once they confirm these configurations, the game shall run a backend process that registers the server instance with the central server lobby, which acts as an address repository for all hosted servers. Once the server hosting is confirmed and the server lobby responds, the player is displayed a management interface in the software where they may control who can access the server or control which scenarios are played. When the player exits the management interface, the server is shut down and delisted from the server lobby.
The next step in the software functionality was to define.
The next function is user accounts. The user account ties the player's account information to their modified character information. It stores statistical changes, keyboard layouts, tracks players' loot, purchases, and experience for their characters, and it also stores user information, names, and contact information. The user will manage the account configurations related to password security, account identity, permissions, and any purchase information. These configurations will be stored with the user's central user account information and will be consistent with all instances of the application. The user account can be managed from the user account main menu GUI. The user account can interface with other software such as Steam login information or Google account information. The user will choose which particular software they want to use with our game.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about the exit case. This is going to be an option that's going to be found in the in-game menu. The in-game menu is going to kind of differ on context based on whether you're in a scenario, if you're in a lobby, etc. It'll be slightly different, if you're actually playing a game. How it comes up might just be a button on the scenario lobby otherwise, and it'll probably be bound to a hotkey. You'll have actually a couple of different levels of the exit feature. You'll have an exit to menu option and an exit game option. Those are actually going to do slightly different things. We click the exit menu option, it's going to take you all the way back to the main menu, where you can then choose to join a new game or host one of your own, set up your own server, but it's not actually going to take you all the way out of the application. If you choose an exit game or exit application, what it's going to do is it's going to take you all the way out of the application, and it's going to shut it down, terminate it, and you're going to be able to be back in whatever client you're running this on, like through Steam. So you can be back to your Steam menu.
We will now cover some of the core mechanics that occur during gameplay after the player has selected to join a game and has fully authenticated through the join game process. We will cover what constitutes gameplay, what are scenarios and how they are executed during the gameplay process. As well, we will cover how a game is considered won or lost. Another mechanic we will discuss is the concept of teams and how teams work. And finally, we will discuss what a character is, how a character is controlled, and what a character is composed of in relation to the player. A scenario is an iteration of gameplay. When a player joins a game, they join a running scenario. A scenario is a set of objectives and goals that must be accomplished in order to terminate the iteration. Players join a group of other players as a team and compete against other teams to complete the objectives and move to the next scenario. Scenarios loop until either the server is terminated or the player exits the server. There are 4 types of scenario objectives. Time-based, which sets a finite time to complete objectives. Time comparison, in which one team completes an objective in opposition to another team, and then the teams swap, and the once opposing team must now complete the same objective in less time. There's a free-for-all in which members of a team must fight and defeat members of an opposing team while trying to stay alive themselves. Finally, a capture-based in which a team must capture a building or an item or an objective in the game and protect items of their own from the opposing team. Currently, we have defined 3 scenarios that we intend to develop with the initial release of our product, listed on this slide. These are defined in more depth in our specification documentation and can be reviewed there as well. A scenario ends and is won when the objectives have been completed by a team. There may only be one winning team in a scenario, and draws are not considered wins. The teams that did not win have therefore lost. At the end of a scenario, the players on a team are rewarded. There are 2 types of rewards, experience points and loot. Experience points can be spent to improve a specific character and are specifically earned for that character. Loot can be spent to customize the appearance of any character that the player has and are earned on the account. When a team wins, they are awarded experience points for the characters and loot for their account. The losing team is just awarded experience points for their characters and do not gain any loot. When a player joins a game, the first menu they are shown is a team selection menu. They decide which team they would like to join, and they may be limited to selecting a team for fairness and balance of the scenario. A team is just a group of players which work together to complete an objective during a scenario. As part of the design, players may interact with their team members through a GUI chat window. At the end of a scenario, the team is removed and players select a new team at the start of the next scenario.
Next, we come to characters. Characters are representations of the player in the game. Characters are packaged with special features and specific functional roles. The player controls the character, and the character can move in the level with the controls. During the playing state, and during each iteration of character death and scenario start, the player may select a new character from the set of characters. However, the player may not change their character in the middle of the scenario while they're still alive. Characters can only be changed at the death of the character. When a player selects a character, they are spawned. The character is created in the game level. The player may then move and control the character around the level. The player may use the character's functions and abilities to complete the level objectives and goals. Every player is given the same set of characters at the creation of their account. However, a player may modify and upgrade the character as the character collects experience. Modifying a character occurs during the account management menu from the main menu. The set of characters are as follows. We have Parrot Pete. Parrot Pete summons parrots and uses pistols. He throws crowd control grenades and has some healing abilities. We have the Cook. The Cook is a powerful melee fighter who dual wields cleavers. He performs short-range attacks on an area. We have Hand Cannon Henry. He is a powerful long-range fighter. He performs very long-range attacks on an area. However, he has very slow close-range attacks. He can, however, shoot crowd control shots. We have Captain No Beard. She is a powerful buffer and short-range damage. She has very fast short-range attacks, but no strong melee abilities. She does have some healing abilities. We have Scallywag Sue. She is a powerful thief-like fighter. She uses stealth and melee. She can make some crowd control moves for quick stealth and drive-by attacks. And finally, we have Voodoo Jim. He is a powerful healer that can turn into a powerful melee fighter. He does strong direct damage healing and then transforms into a powerful direct damage melee fighter. In healing mode, he provides area buffs. In melee mode, he provides area debuffs. He has a Jekyll and Hyde design. Next, we have gameplay controls. The gameplay will be controlled via computer keyboard, controllers, and/or mouse and trackpad. The default settings are designed for typical first-person shooter templates. We have the W, A, S, and D keys for movement. We have the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 keys for special abilities. The G key is for quick items. The E key is for ultimate maneuvers. The Enter key allows for chatting. The left mouse button is used for attack. The right mouse button is used for defend. The middle mouse button, which is the scroll wheel, is used to switch between weapons. However, the user may customize and configure what keyboard keys should be used for what abilities and movements, or the control buttons and mouse buttons to tie into what functions access which game commands. User configurations will be saved and stored to the user account and will be consistent with all instances via the central user account information. Each character has special abilities. Abilities are special moves that a player may use with their character. They're designed to be triggered by one of the 5 special ability keys. The abilities are part of a character design, and each character has the same type of abilities, but each character has distinct abilities. The abilities have a cooldown, and the cooldown is the time between when the ability may be used again. Abilities can be upgraded as a character collects experience points. These experience points are used to buy the upgrades from a set of upgrades on a sequence tree called the feat tree. Each character has a different feat tree, but it follows the abilities rule. It's the same across characters of the same type, but is different for each character in the character set. For example, healers have the same type of feat tree, but it's different for the DPS or for the tank. However, the feat tree for Scallywag Sue would be different from the feat tree for Captain No Beard. Next, we have stats and attributes. Attributes are the biological statistics of a character. They can be modified by a player as the character collects experience points. They're used by the game to determine how powerful and effective an ability is for a specific character. They're part of a character bundle. They start off with a base value that are similar to other characters. But as they're modified by the player through experience gains, they can be dramatically different from all the other characters. The set of attributes are resilience, which determines how much damage is resisted, power, which determines how much damage is done, fortitude, which determines how much damage a character can receive before dying, agility, which determines how fast a character is and also determines what the cooldown is for the abilities, stamina, which determines how much energy a character has to perform physical abilities, intellect, which determines how much energy a character has to perform mental abilities, and willpower, which determines how quickly a special move is generated.
Alright, so software and hardware system interfaces. The main application we're going to interface with is going to be Steam. It's made by Valve. It's a game management application. We're going to need that because that's how we're going to get the game to people, and that's how we're going to do the updates primarily. We also wanted to interface with other common gaming applications. A lot of things you want to do with games nowadays are stream your gameplay to viewers, so that'd be through Twitch is the most popular one. We definitely want support for that baked in. That's going to make things a lot easier. Also, a lot of gamers use VoIP nowadays when they're playing with their friends, so we would want to support different VoIP clients. The big three that you see most often are Discord, Ventrilo, and TeamSpeak. There's also another one called Mumble, but it's kind of hit or miss on popularity. We'd also possibly like to have user-created add-on support. You wouldn't really have that much in a first-person shooter, but you could add support for things like custom overlays, stuff like that, which would also tie into Twitch streaming, things like that. So that would be something we would potentially want to look into, but that would almost definitely be an after-release feature. We're planning to have the game launched primarily from the Steam client. You'd actually open up Steam and then you have your game library and you could launch it from there. Or you could also have an executable on your desktop or whatever your equivalent is for your operating system. And you could log into your account if necessary. You can actually just link that to your Steam account, which would make things way easier, and it'll handle basically do a single sign-on where it logs you in. But if for some reason there's a network failure or it goes down, you'll be presented with a login screen. And once you log in and are authenticated, it takes you to the main menu of the game. Moving on to the networking, controller, and data interfaces section, we're planning to have our application use Amazon Web Services. It's actually where we want all of the game data going. We want it all stored in the cloud. That's great for a couple different reasons. One, if for some reason we ever need to change game data or update it or possibly look at it, it's easier to get it if it's in one single repository. And if the user has to uninstall their application or their computer dies or something like that, they don't have to worry about losing all their progress. They would just reinstall the application, and then when their account is associated with that executable, it's going to tie it right to the cloud, pull all their data, they're going to be fine. We also want a central repository of game servers, again through Amazon Web Services, that every user is going to register with when they host their own server. We'll need a cloud application that's going to send the data about the servers to game instances. That's going to be basically in the form of a server-to-client communication, and it receives game data back. And when the user inputs commands or things like that, it's going to receive that data back. And then the clients are going to request lists of servers when someone has to join a game, and they're going to get back information like all the IPs for the different servers, if there's any password protection on them. They're also going to get a list of like what the current running scenario is, so that can be displayed, how many players are on the server. One important feature is going to be server location, because we're going to distribute this infrastructure across different data centers, and the closer you are, the less latency you're going to have, which is really important for a fast-paced shooter game. It's also going to allow users, when they host a server, to change the name, set a description, things like that. So that's going to also be pulled back to the user as well. And then again, as the user is playing the scenario, it's going to upload anything relevant to the server in real time and store it there.
In conclusion, our final project shall be a game called Peg Leg Pirates, developed using Unity 3D for a variety of personal home computers. On behalf of my team members and myself, I would like to thank you for taking the time to review our project. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or would like to speak to the team before the beginning of CEN 4021, please contact me at the email address included below. Again, thank you for your time and have a good evening.